Even for people moving from Windows 8 to 8.1, you too will see some changes. That's why we're going to begin with a tour of the UI. Now, when you launch Windows and log in, the first thing you see is this start screen, which is really designed around touch technology. The modern UI has a number of different tiles and shapes and sizes. And if you're on a touch screen attached to your PC or using a tablet or smartphone, you can use gestures to get around, tapping tiles, swiping, pinching. We'll talk about gestures a little bit later on in this chapter. Of course, you can continue to use your old hardware, a standard monitor on a PC, and use your mouse to get around, and that's what we're going to do as we take this tour of the UI. So the first thing you'll notice here on the start screen, the tiles, some of them are displaying information that's being updated. We call these live tiles. You'll also notice default apps are appearing, like the calendar, photos, for example, each in their own default shape and size. This too can be customized, and we will be talking about customization later on in this chapter as well. For now, though, let's just move around and try launching one of these apps. Let's say the calendar, for example. We'll give it a tap or a click with your mouse. Now, it does launch one of these new modern style apps built into Windows. So you don't see some of the things you might be used to, like a title bar, a menu bar with file, edit, view, all the way across to help, for example. You don't see in the top right corner the standard minimize and maximize buttons. There's no status bar. We're just simply running this new modern style app called Calendar. So you're kind of on your own, but as you move around, you see things sort of popping up like these little arrows that allow you to move, in this case, from month to month. That's the view I'm in. You might be in a different view. How do you change views? There is an ellipses up here in the top right corner, and as we hover over that, you'll see a prompt. You can show more commands using Windows and the Z, or you could right-click anywhere. Let's try that. We'll right-click anywhere. There's our different views across the top. You might be looking at what's next, for example. This gives you a view of what's happening in your calendar in order. Let's right-click again and switch to a weekly view. Let's right-click and go to the bottom where we can sync up our calendar on multiple devices or create new events. We could also use keyboard shortcuts like Control-N for new, or we could just click anywhere in the calendar and then click on a date. We start creating new events. Now, we don't need to get into the calendar right now, just to know that we're running one of these new modern style apps. To get back to the start screen, there are a number of different options. My favorite and fastest way, I think, is to use the keyboard. Tap the Windows key on the keyboard and you're back to your start screen. So no matter what you're looking at, tapping that key will take you here. Now notice we didn't actually minimize or close up the calendar app. It's still running in the background. If we want to switch back to it, we could click the tile once again, or we could use one of the hot corners. Hot corners are each of the corners on your screen, and they're called hot because things happen when you move to them. So if we move our mouse, for example, to the top left corner of our screen, something pops up. It's a little tile representing the calendar, and we can click it to switch back. Let's go up to the top right-hand corner here with our calendar app running. The hot corners work while the apps are running as well. When you get up there, you'll notice these charms that appear down the right-hand side, and as you move your mouse down the right-hand side, there's search functionality, sharing. There's one way to get back to the start screen. We could click right there. Access our devices and settings from here as well. Let's just click the start icon, and we're back to our start screen. Again, we haven't closed up the calendar app. It's still running in the background. What if we want to run something else? Let's say, for example, Maps. We'll click that tile, and now we're running a second app. With Maps running, you might see prompts, for example, asking for your location, etc. Notice at the top we're looking at the US, but we can change the region. I'm going to click no thanks. Really doesn't matter what app it is or we're running. We're going to go back to our Windows start screen. This time, let's go to the bottom right-hand corner. You'll notice in that hot corner, we get the same charms showing up, and we can go back to the start screen from there. Now let's go up to the top left corner. And when you move up there and then slide down, you'll see tiles representing all of the apps that are running. Notice also we can go to the start screen from here as well. Let's click Calendar. Move down to the bottom left-hand corner, the last hot corner. And there's our little Windows Start icon. Click that and you're back to the start screen. So many ways to get back here. Again, I like the keyboard shortcut, just tapping the Windows key. Those apps that are running are using up system resources in the background. If we really want to close them up, there's a couple of different options. Let's go up to the top left-hand corner, that hot corner, and click the calendar icon. And that switches us to the calendar. One way to close this is to move your mouse to the very top, and when you see the little hand appear, click and drag straight down to the bottom of your screen. Now in Windows 8 we could let go at this point, but if you just wait a minute, it'll actually flip over. Then you can release your mouse button to have closed it up. That means if we go up to the top left-hand hot corner, we won't see the calendar app anymore. It's just our map. So we'll go up there and close this a different way. We'll right-click and choose Close from there. Now we've closed up those apps. Nothing's running in the background. Notice in the bottom left-hand corner here, when we move our mouse around, this little arrow appears. This represents all apps. Now in Windows 8, we could right-click and go to All Apps over here, but now we see Customize. So to get to all of the apps that are installed, we can click this little arrow in the bottom left-hand corner. It changes our view, and if you're on a touch screen, you could just simply swipe from the bottom up to see this as well. Notice we're looking at all of the modern style apps that come with Windows 8.1 that are installed. We can also scroll over to the right-hand side to find some of the accessories that are installed as well. Here's where you can get to anything that's installed on your computer. And in fact, if there's so many that you need to scroll through several screens, you might consider using the search field up here. If I want to go to the calculator, for example, I could start typing in calculator. There's two options, a new modern style calculator or the old-fashioned one in my old desktop environment. Or we could just click up here, take that out, and we're back to looking at all of our apps. Notice the arrow down at the bottom now is switched to an up arrow. Clicking that takes us back to our original start screen. We can also go up to our credentials here in the top right-hand corner. Once you've logged in using your Microsoft account, for example, like a Windows Live account, this gives you access to things like your SkyDrive, for example, your mail. If you're logged in as a local user, you can still go up here and click to do things like sign out, change your account picture, even switch to different accounts if you're sharing this computer. So that's a quick tour of the user interface, which by the way is fully customizable. There is an old environment that you would be more familiar with called the desktop. Notice there is a tile titled desktop. And some of the older apps or programs will run in this environment, but we can go there at any time and explore that as well. We'll do that in the next movie. Your default environment here in Windows 8.1 is this start screen. Many of the apps and tiles that you see on this screen will run in this environment. But there are still many programs that were not designed to run in the new Windows 8 environment, and they will continue to run in another environment. That's what we're going to talk about now, the old desktop environment. There's a couple of different ways to get there. First of all, here on the start screen, you will find a tile labeled desktop. Mine, as you can see, is a solid blue background. You may see something different. But give it a click and you'll switch to that environment. Now this should look familiar to Windows 7 users, where you'll see the background on your desktop. You'll find the recycle bin in the top left corner. That's where all of the files and folders that you delete go temporarily. You might have the exercise files folder like me. Down at the bottom of your screen, as you move your mouse down, automatically hidden is the old taskbar. And this is going to look a little bit different than it did in Windows 8. First of all, in the bottom left-hand corner, we have the return of the Start button. Just simply clicking this will return us to the Start screen. So let's go ahead and do that. So there we are. Now the desktop is actually running like any other app in the background. That means if we go to the top left hot corner, we'll see a tile representing the desktop, and we can click it to flip back. Let's go back down to our taskbar. When it appears, notice there's also Internet Explorer and File Explorer icons, little shortcuts. And of course, we can customize the taskbar and add additional icons down here if we wanted to. In the bottom right-hand corner, we have a keyboard icon for the touch keyboard, which will appear on your screen like a virtual keyboard. And if you have a touch screen, you can start tapping the screen to type. If you're like me, working with a standard hardware keyboard, then you won't need this. Also, the Action Center, Network, and speaker icons appear here. You might also see the date and time. Again, fully customizable. I'm going to change my speaker volume. I'm going to bring it down